residential real estate investing or commercial real estate investing? Which is better? Well, I'll give you a very short answer and then we'll dive more into this. The short answer is, I don't know. To me, the advantages kind of balance out about each. So when I think of this question, my answer is that it depends on you personally and your situation and what goals you're trying to accomplish as to whether residential or commercial is a better option. What I'm going to do in this video is simply highlight the advantages of each strategy, something for you to take into consideration as you compare each one to what you're trying to accomplish and what resources you have for investing. So let's focus on the good things about both. Which one do you want to start with? I don't know. Let's start with commercial. I feel like people always think that one's the most exciting one. So what are the advantages of commercial real estate investing? First and foremost, there is a potential for higher returns. It just is. When you're talking more money in, bigger buildings, there's going to be a higher potential versus if you compare it to like a little single family residential house. Yeah, to get the same returns from a commercial deal with single families, you might have to have 20 or 25 of those single families. It's a no-brainer. There is the possibility for higher returns. Another advantage to commercial, less tenant hassle. So whereas the little single family house or even duplexes or triplexes, you may get new tenants every, 2 years, give or take? I don't know. But you're dealing with individuals and some people end up living in a house for a very long time. But for the most part, your lease is only going to be a year long, maybe 2 years. Somebody might stay somewhere between 1 and, call it 7 years. Commercial tenants tend to be companies, so it's a business. Their minimum lease length might be 5 years long. So you're automatically not having to deal with it every single year. Now, I'm going to throw in a quick clarification because it's relevant to what I just said. When we're talking about commercial buildings, some commercial buildings are still residential units. So any residential building with 5 or more units is considered commercial. So when people talk about commercial investing versus residential, there's a possibility that they might be talking about a single family house, duplex, triplex, fourplex compared to a 5 unit to 50 unit to 500 unit apartment complex. That is a possibility. So there's going to be a little fluctuation in some of the things that I say. I'm just really speaking from the commercial side. So like this lease thing, if you have an apartment building, all those leases may still be a year long, right? So throw some leeway into there. Just remember that. Another advantage to commercial, I already mentioned it, the longer lease terms. But again, residential, you follow me. Another advantage, and this one's huge, is the ability with a commercial building to more directly control its value. Because commercial buildings are valued based on the income that they're bringing in. So if you want to increase the value of a property, find a way to bring in more income. It's that straightforward. Whether you rehab residential units or you find a new tenant or you do some kind of improvement, the more income you can bring in from the renters, commercial renters, whoever the renters are, the higher the value of the property. What this means is, which is the advantage, is that you are not dependent on the market itself to drive the value up for you like you would be on a residential house. We'll get back to that later in case you have no idea what I just said. Don't worry, we're going to get to it. The last major advantage of commercial properties, in my mind, is the financing. Because if you don't qualify for a traditional mortgage or a conventional mortgage for a residential property, which a lot of people don't, commercial cares very little about you as the borrower. Depending on what kind of loan you're getting, they may care, they may want your income or your credit, but because the value of a commercial property is based on the income in which it receives, that's also how the financing is qualified. So if you're having a struggle with mortgages, maybe you've hit your mortgage limit or you just don't qualify, commercial financing now allows you to get out from under that strict umbrella of qualifications. So commercial financing offers a lot of options for anyone because it's based on the business, not the person. So just a quick little recap of the commercial advantages. Possibility for higher returns, less tenant hassle. It's companies, not individuals, shy of that residential exception. Longer lease terms potentially, the ability to control the value of the property, and financing options. Now, before I go to residential, because we're going to hit on this value thing again, I want to make sure that you're understanding the points that I'm making about both the commercial and the residential real estate investing in terms of how the value of the property is determined. So down below, I'm going to link to a video that literally spells it out, because commercial and residential properties are valued differently. And it's absolutely imperative for you as an investor to understand how each one is valued, because if you don't understand that, which you'd be surprised how many people I talk to who have no idea how the value is determined, you have to know how the value is determined if you want control in its fate. So if you know what affects the value of a property, you can know how to increase the value, how to avoid it decreasing when possible. You need to understand that. So make sure you check out that video, because we're about to hit value again on the residential side. So I want to make sure you know what I'm talking about. Now, let's flip over to the residential side. What are the advantages of residential real estate investing, which specifically is single family houses, duplex, triplex, fourplex? It's any residential building with 4 units or less. 5 units and up is commercial, 4 units and less is residential. Now, what are the advantages? First and foremost, they're just flat out cheaper in most cases, but the entry price to get a residential property is going to be a lot easier. I mean, picture buying a single house versus a 100-unit apartment complex. You can imagine the difference in the down payments on those. So just generally speaking, it's going to be cheaper and an easier entry price to get into residential real estate, which means more people can do it. Another advantage, there's typically, with some exceptions, but typically less zoning and construction drama. So let's say that you have a commercial building that houses a restaurant, right? And that restaurant tenant leaves and a new restaurant tenant is coming in. There's a very fair chance that that new tenant is going to need the restaurant set up completely different. There's a build out phase. You know, commercial has to be a lot more structured than just a house. If you just walk in and it's a 3-bedroom house, you might make some improvements, but a house is a house. But commercial buildings, and there can be permit drama with this, zoning drama with this, but then building out for the tenant. Again, not going to be a problem in all cases, but there's a higher potential for it than with residential. Residential, the house is just the house. Easy peasy, no confusion on the front end. Then they typically have a larger tenant pool, meaning there's going to be a lot more people that need a house, and I'm saying house, duplex, triplex, whatever. There's going to be a lot more people that need a house than a commercial space. Commercial tenants are fewer and far between. Everyone needs somewhere to live, period. So you're always going to have a larger tenant pool. Then, similar on that note, but this is a big one, residential real estate typically is going to be more recession resilient. It's going to be less impacted by the state of the economy. Why is this? Well, it's what I just said, is everybody needs somewhere to live. There are very few things today that can't be outsourced, because it seems like everything's getting outsourced and taken over by the robots and automation. Needing somewhere to live as a human being cannot be outsourced, and it's never going to go away. People always need housing. Versus, depending on what's happening in the economy, let's say we hit a massive crash, or when 2020 hit and COVID was a big thing and businesses could no longer go in the office, all those commercial tenants were scattering. Suddenly people were working from home. Companies didn't need offices anymore. Restaurants, depending on what state you were in, were shut down for, could be a long time. But all the while, people still need somewhere to live. No matter what happens in the economy, people need somewhere to live. They don't always need shopping malls, office spaces, hotels, what else is commercial? You name it. They may or may not need it. So residential is typically more recession resilient, or whatever you want to call that. If the economy changes, residential doesn't have as big of an impact. And then lastly, that whole spiel I gave about the value of a property, the advantage to residential, which is also its disadvantage, is that the market has the ability to really drive the value of your property up. The value of your property is not dependent on income. So regardless of whether you even have tenants in it or whether the rent's raised or whatever, market value determines the value of your property. This is a great thing because it has so much ability to add what I like to call free money. If I bought my house at $100,000 and the market drives up, I'm in some popular city that now everyone wants to live in, and suddenly my property's worth $200,000, who am I to argue that? I'm not. I'll take it. It's free money. The disadvantage, which was the advantage to the commercial, is that with commercial, the advantage in using income to drive the value was because you're not relying on the market. If the market doesn't increase the value, you still have the power to increase the value. Whereas residential, translating this into a disadvantage, is if the market doesn't go up, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do. Yes, you can rehab the property, but that's still going to cap out at a certain amount where market value is. But let's say the market does drive it. It has the potential to drive more value. I hope that made sense. If it didn't, leave a comment with your question down below. I'm happy to answer it. So, what is the conclusion? What's better, residential or commercial? Again, I stick with my answer. There is no better one. I think the disadvantages and the advantages weigh out. They balance out with each other. But everyone is going to have a strategy that is better for them. So depending on what your goals are, your resources, and your interests, that's what's going to be better for you, residential or commercial. You get to pick. So what do you think? What's your opinion? Which side of the fence are you on? Leave it in the comments below. Make sure you've hit that like button. Pretty please. It helps drive traffic to all these videos. And make sure you're subscribed because I do a new video. We release it every Thursday, so you can always stay up on these conversations. So I want to hear from you, and I'm excited to get it.